All right, you guys, let's get into first.
There is a movement promoting our stories, and many of us grew up with a strong craving for images we can relate to. Production teams, writers, creative heads have come together to tell stories, and this podcast is their voice. The themes covered are very relevant to the Black community, and anyone concerned by the social and racial injustices that are in place to stifle this voice. The Pan-African voice is not easily heard, and here we talk about our movies, that film or doc which you heard about but didn't get to see. What was the story? Where can I watch it? It now has a voice. Tune in. We walk you through these stories and interview the filmmakers. Welcome. Karibu sana. Karibu sana.
And starting right on the lens. Ready? And action.
What's this about? I only got cargo in here.
We is looking for a runaway.
I ain't seen no runaways for miles.
What's in here, case? This here looks big enough to hold a slave.
You ain't gonna open that. That's Adam's property. We ain't never opened these cases.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode with I, Nazizi, and of course Anna. And it's again a special one because we're together. And yes, we're going to be discussing a short film called Boxed, which was directed by Wanjiru Njendu, who is a Kenyan based in LA. And the main topics we're going to be discussing are bravery, risk, and Black history education.
Yeah, from my perspective, what I loved about Boxed was the choice of production. Wanjiru, to me, was very, very, very careful in telling this story because of how she told the story. And thanks for joining us, Wanjiru. It's really good to have you here. You were able to separate the actual shooting from the sound recording to tell this amazing story of Henry Boxed Brown, who in 1849 ships himself to freedom. He literally boxes himself and has this idea to
mail himself
into freedom from slavery, which is so unique.
I think it was very unique. My initial reaction while watching it was like,
it's like, what?
Hey boy, get another one of you. Help get this crate up on the train. Hurry up, I don't have all night.
You moving coffins now?
I don't ask. They pay me extra, so I just ride the route.
And my son was like, you have to mention it in your podcast. He's the one who taught me about this character, And it's funny because I guess nowadays they've started incorporating it into some of the educational material locally here in the US where he goes to school. And, I not have partaken in the educational upbringing out here at all. Had not heard of Henry Boxed Brown before he brought it to my attention. And your short is a fictionalized film based on this character, Henry Boxed Brown's terrifying but, very brave and ingenious escape from slavery back in set in around 1849. So even for you, not being originally born or from here, how was that for you? Why did you pick this particular story? Wanjiru, why Henry Boxed Brown? I mean, it's a crazy story. Is it because it's so absurd?
No, I didn't pick the story. The story actually found me. I did know of Henry Boxed Brown. I think I went to a museum in Newton when I was in college in Boston. So I was aware of the story, but it's one of those things, memories that you lose. And then I went to an event and Karen Parsons, who used to play Hillary on Fresh Prince, was there. And she does a series of animated historical animations on Netflix called Sweet Blackberry. And they had just done, I think it was the Henry Tubman, John, the guy with the hammer and the rail tracks, and Henry Boxed Brown. And I remember thinking that, gosh, well, what did he go through that? And at the time I was also in a box, in a mental struggle, just trying to push through on several projects and trying to decide, because as a creative, you have a lot of moments where you're trying to decide if you even want to stay in the industry, even when you're successful or on the way to success. And I was also dealing with the death of a friend. So there were a lot of things going on and feeling blocked. And I hadn't written for about maybe 4 months. And so I went and I reread his story, and then went to bed. I woke up at 2 a.m. I couldn't stop thinking, and I just wrote it. And I do call it a fictionalized, because I did create the dialogue, but all the events that happened to the character were actual events, but because it was 1849, I had to put words to what I thought he would have gone through and what the audience would experience. Because one of the things is, I didn't pick it because it was upset or because it's so different. I tell people, don't fight when a story finds you, because sometimes it's even more authentic and honest. And for me, I used to work for Universal Pictures, and I had just left, and I was like, okay, I need something that's a really powerful story, because I'm coming back into directing. I'd taken a break due to some personal reasons, and now I was coming back into directing. And I was like, I need something that is very, very visceral, but I also needed it to be very technical. People look at boxing like, oh, it was not an easy film. We had only a certain space to film in. The actor, there's no dialogue. So, we had to work together to make sure he hit all his cues, which he did amazingly. Performing and the voiceover actors, we recorded no sound on set. Everything we did, we designed in post-production. We did voiceover sessions with the actors. And so I knew I wanted to have something that had a very deep humanity to it, but it was also something that as a director, I could speak to the technicality of the film as well.
Wow. I was very impressed. I think the fact that it's a mind-blowing tale in itself, in addition to how technically and, I really think just the choice of production style, where you were so committed to separating the audio and the visual, and also like just your casting of the lead. He was brilliant. I don't know much about him, but just visually, it was just like almost like a muted role, right, for him. So that already takes a very skilled actor to pull off for a whole shoot.
Yeah, the actor is his name is the lead actor is Ade Tukumbo McCormick, and Ade is he's very expressive. He's a friend. So Ade is actually Sierra Leonean, but after the war, his family moved to Kenya. He grew up in Kenya. So that's how I came to know him, through other Kenyan friends. And, his face is very expressive. And at the time, there was a lot going on with police brutality. That was just when the rumble was really gearing up. And there were just images and images of police shootings and just stories coming out. And we're just like, what is happening? And, you're trying to understand that, you are African, but you're also Black in America. And those were conversations we used to have. And so those were the things we talked about when he was preparing for this, that, slavery may have ended, but they still work with a lot of that mentality. And, the slave patrol actually ended up turning into how the police system was formed. And through those conversations is how we were able to give his character background and depth and motivation and in his performance, in that tiny space. And the funny thing is, Ade is actually claustrophobic. So being in that space also added on, like to really keep him in that space. And so just having him rally and overcome that and manage to bring such a performance, I'm constantly in awe of that.
Oh my gosh. I guess this is why, well, maybe, it's a good way to segue into, my following question about why you chose a psychological thriller, right? I'm slightly claustrophobic, so I can relate. But it's like nothing short of horror to me. So, now I get it. But did that just come about as you started putting pieces together? Tell me more about that.
What you see on screen is what I wrote, with the exception of maybe changing 1 or 2 lines. That has been my most intentional project. I knew exactly what I wanted it to be. I knew everything I wanted from the beginning to the very last frame. To the light sliding over his face, those were conversations I had with my creative team. But, when people think of slavery, I was like, I wanted to focus on the mental. And it was very, very important that, not only are you in a cage in this box, but you're also mentally in a box, And that's the thing. I wanted the audience to be both Henry, but also responsible. And one of the things that people don't know, Henry ended up going up to Nova Scotia because he ended up having to go all the way up to Canada to escape because they were still looking for him, even though he made it to Philadelphia where, he was considered free. He still had to escape, and he became an actor and a performer. And one of his acts was he used to let himself get trapped in a box and escape from it. And, one that I could not let go of, what kind of trauma. Imagine being in a space that small, your food is finished, your water is finished. There's all this sound around you. You don't know if you're going to make it. And then to willingly put yourself back into that, I constantly wonder, what broke inside him that to choose to remain in that space.
I always feel like not having that ancestry just doesn't allow me to enter that space in some way, or those memories. It's really hard to tell, I think, how people move on from them and how they deal with them. It's, I can't somehow get over that layer of, I guess, real life experience. You just don't know sometimes when it's so traumatic, I think, how you're going to cope with it. But yeah, that's interesting that he did that with his coping mechanism. I guess, in a way, it was also that box symbolized his freedom. So in a way, embracing it is like overcoming his own fears. It's like some way triumphant as well. But yeah, I think it's interesting to me personally that, something so, it's at the same time horrific, but at the same time, like you turned it into a thriller. And at the same time, it is used for children's tales. Like I said, my son introduced me to it, and a lot of times people use it for educational purposes. And
it wasn't a thriller. It's very interesting because of how it depends on who the film is and how it's received. I just ended up finding very early in the film festival circuit, I realized that, it made a lot of people uncomfortable. So it was easier for me to package it as a psychological thriller. It isn't, it's a genuine fear that, and it's a genuine experience that somebody went to. But, unfortunately, I had to reword what I was trying to say in the log line to make certain communities comfortable. And unfortunately, as a filmmaker, that's something you have to do. It is a psychological horror. It's not a thriller, but I guess because of the tension that everybody feels going on the journey, that I found that word is what made, festival programming work better for the film.
That's interesting. And I think being respectful and I guess mindful of just the various communities and their stories, and I guess even the different cultures, here, when you talk about slavery as someone who's, of African origin, do you think that kind of influences your subject and your style? I know the project came to you, but just how you went about in the process of telling that story.
I mean, I look at slavery, there's definitely the history of American slavery, but, one of the things that was those very difficult conversations of people not having their freedom started at a very young age, because my grandparents, my father's parents, were actually in the camps, in the Mau Mau camps in Kenya. So we used to have those conversations, like, as I grew older, my thesis film in college was about, the Mau Mau, the surviving veterans at the time, talking to people who assisted field marshals. So for me, I understood, I had to handle it in a way. I just wanted to humanize Henry and what he went through. And that's why it was not foreign for me to tell this story, because we are very fortunate as Africans to be able to trace our lineage and our history. But one of the things I always look at and I try to teach people I mentor is that society has communal feelings and processing emotions. Fear is understood. Joy is understood. Happiness is understood. Love is understood. So my goal was to find what was my theme. And my theme was to communicate that fear and a reminder that, it is that easy. And I think once I kept, whenever I approach a project, I ask myself, what's the common human? What is my audience going to hang on to this? And, it's received across the board everywhere, because I wasn't trying to Africanize it or anything. Like, if you look at the details, in the production design, the crates were used to transport. So they used to pad crates with sackcloth, his water canteen, his clothing, the injuries that he had a cut on his face because he had tried to escape and it was not fully healed. It may be a short film, but I did approach this with the full research, and those details went into the film. My DP was at a festival where he actually met a freedom rider, the ones who rode the buses during the civil rights movement. And the man said that's what he felt when they ran into a line of, police and white and Klan members. And he said, I don't know how this film did it, but it captured what I was feeling sitting in that bus, not knowing if I'd make it out alive. So that's the thing. If as a storyteller, if you find what your character's motivation is and what is the common emotion and expression that the audience can relate to, then that's what I call your North Star. It wasn't gimmicky. It wasn't, trying to make an impact. I honestly was a filmmaker who was dealing with a death and not knowing a friend had been struggling. And it was me literally saying, how many of us are in boxes? We're not in physical boxes, but how many of us are caged inside our heads? And that's what this film was. Yeah, I mean, I think I can't stop saying how much I enjoyed it. And it goes back to me, I guess, from, again, as a producer, the way that you chose, like, intentionally and structurally to do it in a way that, I guess it must have been a vision for you, right? Yeah, and my DP, the DP on the film is actually African, Bongani Mlambo. It was interesting because there were quite a number of us. One of the voice actors is African American, but it's I think storytelling, when you have the passion and the love. And, Bongani understood exactly what I was trying to say. He's from Zimbabwe and his family ended up, coming to the US. And so what we all realized, we had something in common, is that, even though our lineage and our ancestry is traceable, there was still turmoil of some sort on the way. And that was a common platform. And, he's very talented. He understood, even light. Like, I'm a very big, one of the things on my heads of departments are, Wanjiru and the light. Light is a story. It's a tool for me to tell stories. And, when you realize Henry's journey, who was 27 hours, that's a day. That's sunrise, midday, sunset, night. And even that light and the way we use the light in the film, the light is a character. The light tells you what's going on. People said, I always think about, people post and say #sunset. And for somebody else, that meant something else, For somebody else, that means somebody won't see another sunrise. It's just, there was a lot going on that ended up in this very small film. Wow. That is a lot. I think it's a lot. And just to bring it back for the audience who, have maybe less insight onto or haven't seen it, this was filmed in 2018, right? Yes. So before even the pandemic and everything. And it's so ironic how we all then went into that isolation. But having said that, I wanted to hear a little bit more about, where people can actually find it. What are your future plans? Was the vision just to do the short, or? No, it was definitely to tell the story, but also, a lot of times you have to have directing samples. And so, I wanted a really, really strong piece. And the film has done fantastically. It's still in the festival circuit 4.5 years later. It's still playing. It's created so much more work for my team and just everyone acknowledging the work that they did it and input it. But right now it's on Vimeo on demand, which is Vimeo, Vimeo on demand /box. But it's only going to be there maybe for another month or two. But in the US, we are distributing it. It got distribution. It's going to be on Comcast and Tubi later in the year. And there are a few other places that's going to end up. I'm not planning to make it into a feature. I think for me, that was the story and that was the journey I wanted to tell with that. And then, but I always tell people, find a story, especially with a short film, because I funded this out of pocket. I took my last big check of tax returns, from having a studio job. And I said, I'm going to make this film, and invest in yourself. Like, I literally always tell filmmakers, I was trying to fundraise money to do a different project. I was trying to get attached to a project that ended up not going. And, you can really keep chasing, I'll chase this, I'll chase that, I'll this. But you have to absolutely 100%, not just financially, just also choose yourself and be like, look, I want to make something that will absolutely and authentically show my voice as a director. And that's what this film was. And it showed that, everybody who sees it wants to have a meeting with me. That's how I got into the Academy, because somebody sent the film to an Academy member who nominated me. That's how I got my agents. The film was passed on to them. I'd been doing meetings with agents and managers. That's how I got my manager, who introduced me to my agent. And so, have one piece that if Box was the last project I ever made, I would have been okay with that, because it was a complete and full investment in myself.
Right. That's beautiful and that's wonderful. And I think I really appreciate you putting that honestly out there for our audience, being sort of Pan-African. I guess the message is like, be authentic, but tell the story that you want to tell in your own way. And don't be scared to put yourself out there, right? This is like what I'm taking away.
And Box is a very Pan-African film, even though we shot it in the US. Myself as director, I'm Kenyan. Ogani is Zimbabwean, South Africa. Adeto Kumboa is Sierra Leonean. Perez, who was also one of the voice actors, is Kenyan. Gregor, who was an African-American actor, has ties to West Africa. So it really is a Pan-African film. I think Pan-African means, for me, the way I approach it is coming together. And just all our voices mattering. And as a director, I also channel that, I'll listen to my DP, I'll listen to my production designer, I'll have my vision. And that's also something else I like to tell directors: don't get stuck on something. Your DP might have an idea that's better than yours, or expound on your idea better. Listen objectively and apply. And, there's one particular shot, Bongani was like, can I try something else? And he did. And it's the one shot that really affects people in the film. And the way he shot it, he did a sort of Alice in Wonderland, going into the rabbit hole. And, listen to your team. Your actor has a voice, your DP has a voice, everybody who's working on that has a voice, and you become a better filmmaker because of that.
Absolutely. I think, again, that's really super spot on advice. Even though it's like your baby, your concept, your vision, making a film is always, going to be, it takes beyond, I don't even want to say a village. It's like a whole community that you have to just kind of be together for the end of this project. It's like a do or die. And
absolutely.
And so it takes a lot out of people, and making sure that you hear each other and everybody's input is valued and adopted and shared. So I'm so happy. Even I've learned a lot, and I'm just really happy to meet you. Like I said, it's encouraging for this podcast. When I started it was just because I realized, like I said, that we now are telling our stories, and sometimes they get lost, and I don't think everyone's fully aware. And I think by sharing your experience, for example, today, I'm hoping can help, one of our listeners somewhere else. Because I find that, I don't know, even with the festivals, and maybe you can have more input on this, having done so many festival routes, they try to create these categories. And for me, it's great. But at the end of the day, choosing the Pan-African flag kind of means I'm embracing it all, And I find that a lot of times you go to the Black American Film Festival, or you go to that film festival, and in reality, there are two only that are truly Pan-African, I find, globally. The FIFACO and I don't know if you've been to those LA Pan-African, or if you're going to be going. So I just find by categorizing, by separating so often, it just tends to be more divisive than helpful. I don't know if you agree with that.
I will tell you this, Box has played almost, I think we're now almost we're over. I know I stopped counting for my own sanity, because it's very easy to get stuck in the festival circuit. I know we've done over 150. We haven't played any of the major Black film festivals. And one of the things I started to realize, and that's okay, because I think the Black is a very specific pipeline and story. And, as I say, that Box is not it's you can't really categorize the film. It's historical, it's horrifying, it has, as people say, thrilling moments. I think when people get uncomfortable, they use the word thrilling. I like to use the word very human moments. And so I the one thing I'd tell filmmakers is just make the film for yourself, and the festival journey is an additional. I've been very lucky because Box ended up winning the Hague Film Festival award, which, I'm like, wait a minute, did I just win the Hague Film Festival, Global Film Festival? Like, what just happened? And that's a thing, is that, that tells me that, okay, then people are seeing the film. The film is currently touring Europe. It's part of the Caesar Academy has, it won the AMA award. And so the Caesar Academy has what it calls Golden Knights. And it's all the Academy winners, the French Academy, the American Academy, the Italian Academy. The film is touring Europe. And so, your journey might not be conventional, but where your film is supposed to settle and the people it's supposed to find, it will. For festival advice is what I'll tell folks is, just find festivals that are about the filmmakers. There are a lot of festivals about who's attending, which face can they have. And the larger festivals tend to already, more or less, have a certain number of films programmed. And programmers have been honest about that. And they're a bit harder, and it would be great to, premiere this festival, premiere that. But I was just like, I have people messaging me from Mexico or Spain, like, oh my God, I saw your film. I'm reading about Henry. And that was the thing, is that anybody who reads about Henry and goes in, I think if somebody watches Box and then goes and looks up Henry and gets a full understanding, I've done my part as a storyteller, which is to keep the story going and the conversation going.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the fact that you're bringing awareness to it is definitely, kudos to you. Like, nobody else has made that story yet that I'm aware of. Like I said, I happen to have heard it from my son, random fact. Shout out to Lino. But other than that, it's not like it is known. I think if you're maybe specifically African American, it's probably known about that story. But other than that, I don't think your average American is going to know about it, to be honest. So thank you just even for creating that wave of awareness. I think it's brilliant. And it's great to hear you're doing so well and are so busy with all your, engagements, and that it's also spiraled you into more, again, for the listeners and for our audience, another way to get into the market, right? As you said, invest in yourself. Yeah. Sorry, I'm always, wearing my producer hat there and picking up on key points, highlighter. Invest in yourself. Yeah. Absolutely. I love the messaging there. And I just wanted to, repeat it again for those who might have missed it.
All right. What y'all got in here? This one's bigger than usual.
Never you mind. This is Adams Express Company cargo.
Yeah. From door to door, unopened.
Yeah, the other style-related thing that really caught my attention when I watched the film was how the camera lens literally becomes the fourth wall of Henry's box. And so it really helps the audience get a feel for, we'll never really know. This person was literally genius from my perspective.
Yeah.
You've got to be brave, obviously. You've got to be prone, not risk adverse. And needless to say, slavery was something that you would take risks for, escaping. Yeah.
There's a part where from inside the box, he hears someone saying, have you heard about this? We're looking for the N-word, who's run away. And you can feel the fear because the person is asking, first of all, what's in the box? And then they're saying, do you know about somebody who has escaped? And you can imagine the fear of, will they open the box and then find me in here? And the risk is really huge because repercussions for slaves who ran away were huge. So that was a very, very big risk, I think. And so it's nice to kind of get a feel from for the audience, feeling like you're inside the box, hearing everything around you, right, and hearing what's going on.
It's a brilliant story. The main themes are bravery, risk, and I guess, general overall Black history education on slavery.
It's strange they talk about investing in myself. Henry also did that. because, you know, he was trying to free himself and his family, and that didn't happen. And that's what motivated his escape. You know, I'll just tell everyone, you have courage comes in different forms. You know, watch the film, find the humanity, read about Henry, and just remember that, you know, even though this was in 1849, there's still a lot happening, not just in the US, in where power is being misused, where abuses are happening, and just always be mindful of that. But if you see the film, tell somebody to watch the film, tell somebody to look up Henry's story, because I still think it's incredibly, insanely brave what he did. I do not have that courage. I mean, even on airplanes, I'm like, are we there yet? Can I get out? And just remember to be human. I think coming out of the pandemic, it's very easy for people to slip back into, you know, behaviors or personalities that were not good or conducive before. And just choose your freedom and your courage. And if you need to speak up. But watch Box, you know. It's a Pan-African film. It's on Vimeo.com /Box. You can look it up on Vimeo. Yeah. Vimeo on demand. Vimeo on demand, and take a chance on yourself. If you're creative, if you have a story, find like-minded people, and you'll constantly keep creating.
Wanjiru, thanks so much for sharing all that you went through to get Boxed made, as well as a little bit about the journey it's had. And I also wanted to bring it back to an actual website that you still have and is running for the film, which is just boxed.com. Is that right?
No, it's Boxed
the movie. Boxed the film.
Thefilm.com.
Thefilm.com, right. And anything else you want to share in terms of marketing for your film, where you're going, or what you plan to do with it, or if people want to watch it?
So Boxed is on Vimeo right now, as Boxed on Vimeo on demand /Boxed.com. It's also getting released in the US on streamers right now. We have it on Tubi, we have it on Comcast as of next month to be on Comcast, and there are a few other places that are just rolling it out. And in regards to the film, the short, that was it. It's had a good journey. It's had a strong journey, but I think it accomplished what I needed it to accomplish, with telling Henry's story and sparking conversation. That's the main thing with that. And I hope people watch it. I hope people get reminded daily to speak up and to just, there's a lot going on in the world, and a lot going on with policy changes and election years in some countries, midterms in others. So just to be mindful and invest in yourself. That really was what Box was for me. It was me investing in myself and finding a story I really connected to. And at the time, I was fortunate enough to be able to invest in myself, and it has continued to pay it forward.
That's great. And that's a really powerful message. You've inspired even me to invest in myself, Wanjiru. I think we sometimes forget.
You have to breathe before you click, you know, transfer money and pay everyone, and then watch your bank account go. But it is worth it. I have a nice chunk of gold from the Caesar Academy. So I whenever I have a moment, I look up and I'm like, okay, you're there on my little shelf. And so it's good.
That's awesome. Okay, well, thanks again. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll definitely keep an eye out for Boxed, the film.
And another one. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Pan-African Film Podcast. We are now on Spotify and Instagram. Just search Pan-African Film Podcast to follow and like us there. Our new platform is 360 Africa. That's 360 Africa. And we want to thank our Kenyan Vibe partners. Shout out to the KV Squad. Last but not least, we thank our editor Ace. Please send us your feedback, like, follow, and comment.